Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. The Climate Guy setting the record straight about climate. This video is titled, Viewing the Arctic with Only One Eye Open. I'm going to show an example of how climate experts mislead the public by showing them only half of the story. Let's look at one very ridiculous example of this from last autumn. Shortly after last year's election, the fake news Washington Post announced, political people in the United States are watching the chaos in Washington in the moment, but some people in the science community are watching the chaos somewhere else, the Arctic. Then they said the Arctic is super hot. Super hot in the Arctic in November? What could they possibly be talking about? Here was a map from the same article showing temperature anomalies on Thursday, November 17, 2016. What they were referring to was this area near the North Pole painted bright red, which was about 20 degrees Celsius above normal. So temperatures there were actually well below freezing, but they were 20 degrees Celsius above their normal temperature of minus 25 C. I'm not sure that very many people would consider minus 5 Celsius to be a super hot temperature. So what is it that the experts didn't see in this map? Well, if we move over a short distance from the pole, there's a very cold region over Siberia, about 20 degrees Celsius below normal. The relative warmth over the pole lasted a day or two, but this record cold region over Siberia lasted for weeks. People in the Siberian Arctic were experiencing temperatures of minus 40 to minus 50 degrees Celsius. And the fake news Washington Post is writing articles saying the Arctic is super hot. So what was going on with the weather that produced extreme cold in Greenland, relatively warm temperatures at the pole, and extreme cold in Siberia? There was a large loop in the jet stream which brought warm air up from Africa and displaced the cold air from the pole over into Siberia. What the Washington Post is of course trying to mislead the readers into believing is that greenhouse gases over the pole produce the warm air. Does that also mean that there was a shortage of greenhouse gases over Siberia and Greenland? Well, of course not. Some climate experts have tried to blame these big loops in the jet stream on global warming. But 40 years ago, climate experts blamed the identical loops in the jet stream on global cooling. This is the December 1977 issue of National Geographic. The prior winter was one of the coldest on record in the East Coast, and it was extremely warm and dry on the West Coast and up into Alaska. It actually snowed in Miami that winter, and there were days when it was warmer in Alaska than it was in Florida. And what did the large body of experts blame it on then? They said it was due to cooling. And they said, you see a greater north-south swing of the jet stream, increasing the likelihood of persistent looping weather systems such as last winter's. Climate experts currently blame these big loops in the jet stream on global warming, but 40 years ago they blamed them on global cooling. Now let's look at the other half of the picture which climate experts are ignoring. This is a graph from the Danish Meteorological Institute showing polar temperatures during 2017. The green line shows the normal temperature, and the red line shows the measured temperature in 2017. This has been a very typical pattern in recent years. Winter temperatures were well above normal, but since May 1st, every single day has been below normal temperature. So we've already discussed what's causing these relatively warm temperatures in the winter. These big loops in the jet stream are bringing warm air up from the south and raising temperatures about 5 degrees Celsius above normal. Once winter ends and these loops in the jet stream subside, the Arctic has been below normal temperature, and we've been seeing this summer after summer for about 15 years. A skeptical person would observe, though, that the warm winter anomalies are much larger than the cold summer anomalies. What causes this? It's called latent heat. Once the ice starts melting, temperatures stay very close to the freezing mark, marked in blue. Think of a glass of ice water. The temperature stays very close to the freezing mark. It can't move up much, it can't move down much. When ice melts, it absorbs heat, and when it freezes, it releases heat. This holds temperatures very close to the freezing mark when you have liquid water and solid water at the same time. And what I've just showed you causes a huge problem with the global temperature record. Most of the claimed global warming is due to relatively warm Arctic winter temperatures. But there's no latent heat exchange during the winter. It's only during the summer that we see it. So we see much larger positive anomalies in the winter than we do negative anomalies in the summer. What NASA does is they average the temperatures evenly and get a big positive anomaly for the year. But this is fake science caused by the fact that NASA is averaging temperature rather than heat. During the winter, a small change in atmospheric heat can cause a large swing in temperature. But during the summer, it requires a very large change in heat to produce a small change in temperature. This is because of the latent heat of melting and freezing of water. If NASA measured atmospheric heat rather than temperature, we would see much less Arctic warming, or perhaps none at all. Apparently, no one ever told Gavin Schmidt at NASA about latent heat. So let's look closer at these cold temperatures which the pole has been experiencing since about May 1st. There's only about 90 days per year when the North Pole can melt. We're about halfway through that, and temperatures have been below normal there every single day. That means there's not much melting going on at the North Pole. And the current weather forecast from the National Center for Environmental Prediction shows that very cold air is going to spread across the Arctic Basin next week. There was one day last November when the North Pole got up to minus 5 degrees Celsius. The Washington Post reported that as chaos and super hot. And now the Washington Post chooses to ignore an entire summer of below normal temperatures at the pole. This is called fake news. Thanks to James O'Keefe, the filmmaker, everyone knows now that CNN is #1 in fake news. But he says that Washington Post is #2. And we can see why Washington Post is rated #2 in fake news. They cherry-picked one warm day in November as being global warming, and they ignore 70 days of cold weather in the summer. Visit Toto on the web at realclimatescience.com. He's been pulling back the curtain on junk science for a long time.